The emergency beacon's rhythmic pulse provided the only soundtrack to what Captain Riley Harrison was becoming increasingly certain would be his final performance. Each flash of red light illuminated the twisted wreckage of his reconnaissance vessel, scattered across what the navigation charts had optimistically labeled as potentially habitable terrain, but which reality had revealed to be a death trap disguised as a jungle. "Well, this is going about as well as my last performance review," he muttered to his suit's medical system, which responded with a cheerful chime that somehow managed to sound deeply concerned. The readout painted a picture that would have been fascinating from a scientific standpoint if it weren't describing his own imminent demise. Xerion 7's native plant spores had infiltrated his life support during the crash, introducing toxins that were systematically shutting down his organs with the efficiency of a bureaucratic process. His vision blurred as the poison reached his optic nerves, turning the alien jungle into an impressionist painting rendered in shades of pain. The binary stars overhead cast everything in dual shadows that shifted and danced like cosmic disco lights, which would have been beautiful if he weren't dying. His hands shook as he attempted to reach his emergency medical kit, but his motor functions were degrading faster than his sense of humor. "Medical system, remind me to file a complaint about the tourism brochure for this planet," he said, his voice carrying the kind of forced levity that soldiers developed when facing situations that were absolutely, completely, and thoroughly beyond their control. Failure to mention the lethal atmospheric contamination seems like a significant oversight. Captain Harrison, toxin levels have reached critical thresholds across multiple organ systems. Recommend immediate evacuation to medical facility. Outstanding suggestion. I'll just call for an Uber to the nearest hospital. I'm sure they'll be here any minute. Riley's laugh turned into a cough that tasted like copper and regret. The nearest human medical facility was approximately 14 light-years away, which might as well have been 14 million for all the good it did him now. The jungle around him pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that his increasingly unreliable vision interpreted as either naturally occurring light displays or hallucinations brought on by oxygen deprivation. Probably hallucinations, he decided, since the patterns seemed to be moving in response to his heartbeat. Though given his recent luck with supposedly reliable intel, the lights could be anything from sentient plant life to interdimensional predators. Movement in his peripheral vision caught his attention, though focusing on it required more effort than he remembered movement tracking taking in the past. A figure emerged from between the massive tree-like structures that dominated this region, moving with a fluid grace that seemed to ignore conventional physics. His first coherent thought was that death-induced hallucinations were apparently quite creative, because the figure appeared to be an attractive woman whose only obviously non-human characteristic was a pair of elegantly pointed ears. "Great," he wheezed. Dying brain decides to conjure up someone who looks like she stepped out of a fantasy novel. At least my subconscious has good taste in rescue hallucinations. The figure approached with obvious caution, her movements suggesting familiarity with dangerous terrain and possibly dangerous people. As she drew closer, Riley's compromised vision registered details that his rational mind insisted couldn't be real. Her skin held an almost luminescent quality in the binary starlight, and her eyes reflected light with an intensity that suggested either enhanced biology or really impressive contact lenses. "You are injured," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made his suit's audio systems buzz with confusion. The universal translator struggled with her language, producing subtitles that flickered between possible meanings like an indecisive artificial intelligence. "Injured is one way to put it," Riley replied, surprised that his hallucination was interactive. "Slowly dissolving from the inside out might be more accurate. Though I appreciate the diplomatic phrasing. Very considerate for a figment of my imagination." She tilted her head with a curious expression that somehow managed to convey both concern and amusement. "You believe me to be a hallucination? Well, the alternative is that I've been rescued by someone who looks suspiciously like every teenage fantasy I ever had about meeting alien princesses, and my experience with the universe suggests it's not usually that accommodating. Plus, the whole dying thing is probably affecting my perception of reality. Your species possesses an interesting approach to existential crisis," she observed, moving closer to examine his condition. Most beings facing imminent death tend toward panic or despair rather than conversational humor. Panic takes too much energy, and despair is bad for morale. Besides, if I'm going to die on an uncharted planet, I might as well entertain myself with quality banter during the process. The woman's examination of his condition became more focused as she apparently recognized the severity of his situation. Her eyes shifted from their previous warm amber to a deeper crimson that should have been alarming but somehow felt reassuring instead. Riley's rational mind filed this under definitely hallucination evidence, while the rest of his consciousness enjoyed the attention. The toxins in your system are quite exotic, she said, her tone shifting to something more clinical. Native to this world's flora, designed to break down foreign biological matter for nutrient absorption. Your species lacks the evolutionary adaptations necessary to process such compounds. Evolutionary adaptations. Right. I knew I should have upgraded my immune system before taking this assignment, but you know how military health plans are about experimental treatments. She smiled, and Riley noticed that her canine teeth were longer and sharper than baseline human normal. Which either meant his hallucination was becoming more detailed, or he was about to discover that the universe had an even more twisted sense of humor than he'd previously suspected. There may be a solution to your condition, she said, her expression becoming more serious. Though it would require a rather unconventional medical intervention. Unconventional medical intervention on an alien planet administered by someone who may or may not be a hallucination, Riley summarized. Honestly, that still sounds better than waiting around to see what my organs decide to shut down next. What did you have in mind? The woman settled beside him with movements that suggested both predatory grace and genuine concern, a combination that Riley's increasingly compromised cognitive functions found simultaneously alarming and oddly comforting. Her proximity brought with it a scent that reminded him of ozone and starlight, if starlight could have a smell, which his rational mind insisted it couldn't but his enhanced sensory perception seemed to disagree with. I am Lyanna of the Crimson Court, she said, her voice carrying formal undertones that suggested this introduction held significance beyond simple politeness. My people are what your species might classify as vampiric, though the term carries connotations that don't accurately reflect our biological reality. Vampiric, Riley repeated, his voice carrying the kind of carefully neutral tone he'd perfected during briefings that involved information he really wished he hadn't learned. Well, that's either really good news or catastrophically bad news, depending on whether you're the kind of vampire that saves people or the kind that considers them a mobile snack bar. We feed on negative energy rather than life force, Lyanna explained, her expression suggesting she'd had this conversation before and found the necessity of it mildly exhausting. Toxins, radiation, harmful substances that would prove lethal to most organic life. What is slowly killing you would serve as sustenance for my species. So you're telling me that the cosmic irony of my situation is that I'm dying from what amounts to alien vampire food? Riley managed a laugh that turned into another cough, this one producing results he decided not to examine too closely. That's either the universe's idea of a joke or the setup for the galaxy's most unlikely medical intervention. The intervention I propose involves a symbiotic exchange, Lyanna continued, her crimson eyes studying his deteriorating condition with obvious concern. My bite would create a biological bridge between our systems, allowing me to absorb the toxins while sharing my regenerative capabilities with your physiology. The process would neutralize the immediate threat to your life. Vampire bite as medical treatment. Got it. Riley processed this information with the kind of calm acceptance that usually indicated either profound wisdom or complete mental breakdown. I have to ask, what's the catch? Because in my experience, life-saving medical interventions that sound too good to be true usually involve fine print that includes side effects like, may cause permanent transformation into something that used to be human. The process is irreversible, Lyanna admitted, her tone carrying the weight of someone delivering news that would fundamentally alter the recipient's understanding of their own existence. The symbiotic bond would permanently modify your biological systems, granting enhanced longevity, improved physical capabilities, and the ability to process toxins as energy sources. You would become something between human and my species. Enhanced longevity, Riley mused, feeling another wave of toxin-induced vertigo wash over his consciousness. How enhanced are we talking? Like, live to see retirement enhanced, or watch civilizations rise and fall enhanced? The latter, I'm afraid. My people measure existence in millennia rather than decades. The bond would grant you a similar lifespan, assuming you don't encounter something more immediately lethal than planetary toxins. Riley considered this while watching his vital signs continue their steady decline toward numbers that represented permanent unconsciousness. So my options are, die horribly in the next few minutes from exotic poison, or accept vampire bite therapy that turns me into an immortal hybrid with improved toxin resistance. When you put it like that, the choice seems pretty straightforward. The transformation extends beyond mere biological modification, Lyanna warned, her expression becoming more vulnerable. Among my people, such bonds are considered sacred, typically formed only between chosen companions or family members. The process creates an emotional connection that transcends simple medical intervention. Emotional connection with a vampire who eats toxins for breakfast, Riley summarized, his humor becoming more strained as pain flared through his nervous system. Well, I've had worse relationship dynamics. At least this one comes with clear mutual benefits and doesn't involve anyone stealing my credit cards. Lyanna's laugh carried musical qualities that made his audio equipment produce confused harmonic analyses. Your species approaches existential transformation with remarkable levity. Most beings require extensive psychological preparation before accepting such changes. Most beings probably aren't currently dying from alien plant spores while having conversations with beautiful vampires about immortality, Riley pointed out. The circumstances tend to simplify the decision-making process. Plus, panic and existential dread take energy I don't really have to spare right now. You find me beautiful? Lyanna asked, her expression shifting to something that might have been surprise mixed with something warmer. Well, either you're genuinely attractive or the toxins are causing hallucinations that cater to very specific fantasies. Either way, as dying experiences go, this ranks pretty high on the could-be-worse scale. Lyanna moved closer, her proximity causing his suit's sensors to register energy patterns that didn't conform to any known biological signatures. The bond would also mean that we would share experiences, memories, sensations. You would gain access to my accumulated knowledge of the galaxy, while I would experience existence through human perspective for the first time in centuries. Shared experiences with someone who's seen the galaxy, Riley mused. That actually sounds like a significant upgrade over my current knowledge base, which mostly consists of military protocols and an embarrassing amount of trivia about vintage Earth entertainment. Though I should warn you, human perspective includes a lot of complaining about things that are probably insignificant on cosmic scales. I find your perspective refreshing, Lyanna admitted. My people tend toward melancholy after the first few centuries of existence. Your humor suggests a resilience that might prove complementary to my own nature. Riley felt his consciousness beginning to fade as the toxins reached his central nervous system, but he managed to maintain focus long enough to reach a decision that felt both inevitable and surprisingly comfortable. All right, Lyanna of the Crimson Court. If you're willing to share immortality with a dying soldier who makes terrible jokes during medical emergencies, I'm willing to accept whatever comes with vampire bite therapy. Worst case scenario, I become an immortal hybrid. Best case scenario, I don't die in the next 10 minutes. Either way, it's an improvement over the current situation. Lyanna's smile revealed those distinctive fangs again, but this time they seemed less like predatory weapons and more like the tools of salvation they apparently were. The moment Lyanna's fangs pierced the skin of his throat, Riley experienced what could only be described as controlled lightning coursing through his circulatory system. The bite itself was surprisingly gentle, more like precision medical equipment than the savage attack his limited vampire knowledge had prepared him for. What followed defied every expectation he'd formed about medical procedures, cosmic transformation, or the general nature of reality. Well, he managed to say despite the otherworldly sensations flooding his nervous system, this is definitely not covered in standard military medical training. Though I have to admit, the bedside manner is excellent. The toxins that had been systematically destroying his organs began flowing out of his system as if drawn by some cosmic vacuum, replaced by something that felt like liquid starlight mixed with concentrated vitality. His consciousness expanded beyond the normal boundaries of human perception, suddenly able to taste colors, hear electromagnetic radiation, and feel the quantum fluctuations that govern molecular interaction on a subatomic level. The process will intensify before it stabilizes, Lyanna murmured, her voice now carrying harmonics that resonated directly with his restructuring neural pathways. Try to remain calm as your biology adapts to new operational parameters. Calm, Riley repeated, watching his hands begin to glow with faint bioluminescent patterns that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Right. I'm sure calmness is a perfectly reasonable response to having my DNA rewritten by cosmic vampire magic. This is probably just like getting a software update, except the software is my entire existence. Through the bond forming between them, Riley began experiencing flashes of Lyanna's memories. Vast star fields wheeling across centuries, civilizations rising from primitive beginnings to technological transcendence before eventually fading into cosmic dust. Each memory carried emotional weight that spanned millennia, loneliness so profound it had become a fundamental aspect of her personality. You've been alone for a very long time, he observed, the realization hitting him with the force of shared experience rather than intellectual understanding. Centuries of watching everything you care about age and disappear while you remain unchanged. My people scattered across the galaxy after our homeworld succumbed to a plague we couldn't absorb, Lyanna explained, her mental voice now speaking directly to his consciousness as their bond deepened. We became wanderers by necessity, seeking others of our kind while avoiding the fear our nature typically inspires in other species. Riley felt his cellular structure continuing to reorganize itself, muscle density increasing, reflexes sharpening, and his sensory range expanding to encompass frequencies of light and sound that had previously been completely imperceptible. The military strategist in him recognized the combat applications immediately, while the human part of his consciousness marveled at the sheer scope of the transformation. I'm becoming something that could survive environments that would kill baseline humans, he realized, flexing his fingers and watching them move with precision that exceeded his previous motor control capabilities. Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, toxin immunity. It's like someone took the concept of military enhancement and redesigned it using principles from advanced alien biology. The bond grants you access to evolutionary advantages my species developed over millions of years, Lyanna confirmed, her consciousness now intertwined with his in ways that made individual identity somewhat negotiable. You retain your human personality and perspective while gaining capabilities that transcend baseline biological limitations. The transformation reached his brain chemistry, flooding his consciousness with neurotransmitters that didn't exist in standard human biology. His thinking became faster, more complex, capable of processing multiple streams of information simultaneously while maintaining emotional equilibrium. The change felt like upgrading from basic computational hardware to quantum processing systems. This is either the most advanced medical treatment in galactic history or the most elaborate seduction technique ever devised, Riley observed, his enhanced perception noting that Lyanna's emotional state carried undertones of hope mixed with uncertainty. Though I have to admit, immortality and cosmic consciousness make for pretty compelling relationship benefits. The bond between us is sacred among my people, Lyanna's mental voice carried formal weight. It represents complete trust, shared existence, eternal companionship. I did not anticipate the emotional significance when I offered to save your life. Eternal companionship with someone who finds my terrible jokes amusing, Riley considered this while feeling his metabolism shift to accommodate his new ability to process toxins as nutrition. That's actually a significant improvement over my previous relationship prospects, which mostly involved people who actively discouraged my sense of humor. Through their connection, he felt Lyanna's surprise at his casual acceptance of immortality mixed with genuine affection for his irreverent attitude toward cosmic transformation. Her loneliness, accumulated over centuries of isolation, began to ease as she experienced human resilience and adaptability through their shared consciousness. "Your species possesses remarkable capacity for adjustment," she observed. "Most beings require extensive psychological counseling after fundamental biological modification. You appear to be treating it as an interesting career development." "Well, when you put it that way, Immortal Vampire Soldier does sound like a significant promotion from Mortal Reconnaissance Scout," Riley admitted, feeling the last of the deadly toxins leave his system, replaced by energy that tasted like concentrated moonlight. "Plus, the benefits package is outstanding. Enhanced abilities, cosmic consciousness, and eternal companionship with someone who's seen the galaxy. It's like winning the cosmic lottery, except the prize is becoming something beyond human." The transformation completed with a sensation like puzzle pieces clicking into perfect alignment across every level of his existence. Riley opened his eyes to find his perception of reality fundamentally altered, capable of seeing Liona's true nature as energy and consciousness housed within biological form, beautiful in ways that transcended simple physical attraction. "So," he said, testing his new voice, which now carried harmonics that made nearby plant life respond with increased bioluminescence, "what do immortal vampire soldiers do for fun? Because I suspect my previous hobbies might need some cosmic scale adjustments." Riley awakened to find that consciousness now came with a comprehensive user manual written in languages he didn't remember learning but somehow understood perfectly. His enhanced senses catalogued every detail of Zirian 7's environment with military precision, while simultaneously appreciating the artistic beauty of bioluminescent patterns that painted the jungle in colors that didn't exist in baseline human visual perception. "Systems check complete," he announced to the jungle at large, stretching muscles that now responded with efficiency that made his previous physical capabilities seem quaint by comparison. "All toxins successfully converted to usable energy, immortality upgrade installed without technical difficulties, and cosmic consciousness apparently comes with excellent customer support." Liona watched his adaptation process with obvious fascination, her own relief at finding compatible companionship radiating through their bond like warmth from a distant star. "Your integration with the enhancement is remarkably smooth. Most beings experience significant disorientation during the first few hours of transformation. I've always been good at adapting to new equipment," Riley replied, testing his enhanced reflexes by catching a falling leaf that his previous human perception wouldn't have detected until it landed. "Though I have to admit, becoming partially vampire wasn't covered in any of the technical manuals I studied. This is definitely going to require some creative paperwork when I file my mission report." "Mission report?" "Military documentation about my assignment to scout this planet for potential colonization. Though I suspect the recommended classification might change from potentially habitable to contains life-altering opportunities for species enhancement." Riley examined his hands, noting that they now processed information about molecular composition through touch alone. "On the plus side, I can personally attest that the local toxins are no longer a threat to human colonists, assuming those colonists don't mind becoming immortal hybrids in the process." Through their bond, Liona shared memories of other worlds she'd encountered during her centuries of wandering, places where her unique capabilities had helped struggling colonies survive environmental hazards that conventional technology couldn't address. The images filled Riley's consciousness with possibilities that extended far beyond simple military reconnaissance. "You know," he said, standing and marveling at balance and coordination that made his previous physical training seem elementary, "I'm starting to think this whole dying and being rescued by a vampire situation might be the beginning of something significantly more interesting than my original career plan." "What was your original career plan?" "Complete this reconnaissance mission, file a report recommending against colonization due to environmental hazards, return to base for reassignment to the next potentially lethal scouting operation. Standard military progression until retirement or unfortunate encounter with hostile alien wildlife." Riley gestured at the jungle around them, which now seemed more like a vibrant ecosystem than a death trap. "Immortality and cosmic consciousness definitely represent a deviation from standard career trajectory. Lionel's amusement rippled through their connection as she observed his pragmatic approach to existential transformation. My own plans have become similarly flexible. I had intended to continue wandering between worlds, seeking others of my kind while avoiding excessive contact with species that might find my nature alarming. And now I find myself bonded to someone who treats vampiric transformation as a professional development opportunity and cosmic consciousness as an interesting technical challenge. Her expression carried warmth that had been absent during centuries of solitary existence. It suggests possibilities I hadn't previously considered. Riley activated his suit's communication systems, noting that his enhanced perception could now interpret the quantum fluctuations that carried information across interstellar distances. The military beacon that had been broadcasting his emergency status continued its automated distress call, though his vital signs now registered as so far beyond baseline human that the medical monitoring systems had given up and started displaying error messages. I should probably update my status with command, he said, reviewing the communication protocols that would need significant modification to account for his current situation. Though explaining that I've been rescued by an alien vampire who solved my toxin problem by turning me into an immortal hybrid might strain the credibility of even my most creative commanding officers. Perhaps we could phrase it more diplomatically, Lionel suggested. Successful first contact with beneficial alien species resulting in enhanced survival capabilities for human personnel. Beneficial alien species, Riley repeated, appreciating her diplomatic approach to describing vampiric transformation. I like it. Very professional, doesn't immediately trigger panic responses from people who get their vampire knowledge from entertainment media. Through their bond, he sensed Lionel's growing excitement at the prospect of having a companion who could help her interact with other species without automatically generating fear responses. His military background provided strategic thinking capabilities that complemented her centuries of accumulated knowledge, while his enhanced physical capabilities would allow him to survive environments that remained hazardous even to her resilient biology. We make an interesting team, Riley observed, reviewing the tactical applications of their combined abilities. Enhanced human soldier with toxin immunity and cosmic consciousness, partnered with ancient vampire who can neutralize environmental hazards that would stop conventional military operations. There are probably a lot of places in the galaxy that could benefit from that particular combination of skills. Places where colonies struggle against hostile environments, worlds where conventional medical technology can't address exotic biological threats, situations that require both technical expertise and supernatural problem-solving capabilities, Lionel added, her mental voice carrying anticipation that had been absent from her existence for longer than human civilization had existed. Riley stood, testing his new capabilities by effortlessly leaping to a tree branch that would have required climbing equipment in his previous incarnation. The enhanced strength felt natural, as if his body had always been capable of such feats and was only now remembering its potential. You know what? He said, looking out across the alien landscape that no longer held any threat to his enhanced physiology, I think I'm going to enjoy being immortal. Especially if it means spending eternity with someone who appreciates both cosmic transcendence and really terrible military humor. Terrible humor appears to be a defining characteristic of your species, Lionel observed, her amusement creating harmonics in their shared consciousness that felt like distant music. I find it refreshing. Wait until you hear my collection of jokes about interdimensional physics, Riley promised, activating his suit's navigation systems to plot a course toward his ship's emergency beacon. Though I should warn you, immortality means you'll have plenty of time to regret encouraging my sense of humor. As they moved through the jungle together, Riley's enhanced perception cataloged dozens of potential applications for their combined abilities, from assisting struggling colonies to exploring worlds too hazardous for conventional expeditions. The universe suddenly seemed full of possibilities that extended far beyond simple military service, opportunities to help others while exploring the galaxy with someone who had seen the birth and death of stars. So, he said as they reached his damaged but reparable vessel, what do you think about modifying this ship for long-term exploration? Because I have a feeling our partnership is going to require some serious travel capabilities. Lionel's smile carried the promise of adventures that would span centuries, and Riley discovered that immortality came with the unexpected benefit of having enough time to properly appreciate both cosmic wonder and really good companionship.